panel. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Dean Brown. It's great to be here today. I come to you live from Mickey's just to make all of you feel at home, and especially our panelists. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a discussion on the business of real estate. We're very fortunate to have extremely knowledgeable panelists today, and I'd like to take a moment just to have each of them introduce themselves. We'll start with Aiden Nadavarik, a commercial real estate broker at CBRE Hubble Commercial in Des Moines. Aiden.
Thanks, Kate. This is Aiden Nadarovich, First Vice President, CBRE in Des Moines. Graduated from the University of Iowa in 2013 with a degree in management and a certificate in entrepreneurship. Started with CBRE right out of school. Worked on my own for about 2.5 years. Since then, formed a team of 7 with my business partner, Tyler Dingle, including an analyst, 4 producing brokers, and 2 support staff. Our business here in Des Moines is mainly focused on retail, development, investment, and industrial. The investment industrial is led by myself. The retail and investment portion is led by Tyler on our team. Thanks for having me. Super excited to answer all the questions.
Thank you, Aiden. We also have Sarah DeLisi, who's an urban retail brokerage associate at Cushman & Wakefield in Chicago. Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kate. My name is Sarah DeLisi. I graduated from the University of Iowa in 2016 with a degree in communication studies and a certificate in entrepreneurial management from JPEC. And I've been in Chicago ever since. I am now at Cushman & Wakefield here at our corporate headquarters in Chicago. And I work on a team of 5 doing urban retail leasing. We primarily focus on urban tenant rep and represent tenants that you guys are all probably familiar with. Levi's, Coach, Stuart Weitzman, North Face, Timberland, Claire's, Journeys, Vince, different tenants like that, helping them find new locations in Chicago. And then we also work with one national tenant called It's Sugar, doing deals all around the country in Hawaii and San Francisco and Key West and everywhere in between. So very excited to get started today. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Sarah. And Chris Baker is president of Zeller Realty Corporation out of Chicago. Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Chris Baker, I graduated Iowa in '98 with a degree in business. Went from there to the Air Force, so I did ROTC at Iowa. And then went to business school at the University of Chicago. And when I started in real estate, I was with a middle market lender called Wrightwood Capital. We lent on all types of value add real estate, ground up development, repositioning type business plans, but came to Zeller in 2013. I run all of asset management. We have a portfolio of about 10 million square feet of value add office from Portland to Denver, Chicago, Minneapolis, Indianapolis in the Midwest. We're in Atlanta in the Southeast. And most recently with the COVID, we've had the opportunity to get into multifamily development out of some disruptions in that market and in the equity market. So we're expanding our platform and what we're going to be working on in the future.
Thank you, Chris. And our final panelist is Mike Frazier, president of Silver Oak Investment Corporation out of California.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Frazier. I'm an Iowa native from Sheraton, Iowa, and graduated from Iowa in 1972 and made my way west, eventually ending up in Orange County. I started in real estate in '74 in the Phoenix area, and then a year later moved to Orange County with the transfer. Primarily residential home building and land development, and worked for a company there for about 12 years, becoming chairman of the board of the American region and on the main board of directors of our British parent company, and went out on my own in early 90s, doing primarily home building and land development in the California area, though I've done some in Seattle area and Sparks, Nevada, and some in Phoenix. Primarily Southern California is where where I like to stay close to. And the market's been great for many, many years, and feels a little superheated right now, with properties selling way over asking price and multiple offers, and which is happening all over the country, I know, but probably not where the average new home sales price is 1.2 million. So I look forward to answering any questions that you might have today about, is this a bubble? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'm gonna start with an easy question, hopefully for all of you. Just if you wouldn't mind sharing with us what a favorite memory from your time at Iowa before we start on real estate. Sarah? Or Chris, hop in, Chris.
Sure. Favorite memory was easily my first football game. So it was Iowa, Michigan came to Iowa. So still stands out in my mind. I got my picture in the Daily Iowan. They took a picture of the crowd and I was in it. So I still have that saved. So definitely one of my favorite memories.
It's a great one. How about you, Sarah?
It's hard to choose one. I mean, I'm still very close friends with everyone I went to Iowa with. I feel very fortunate for that. So I think just meeting all of my friends that I'm now friends with as an adult. It's hard to choose just one thing, but I guess that's, yeah, that's gotta be it. I don't know, the people, that's what it's all about.
I think we learned that over this last year for sure too. How about you, Aiden?
Sorry, I had some technical difficulties, had to log back in. I would second Sarah's comment there as well. You know, I did courses in common when I was early on as a freshman and met a lot of the same folks that lived in my dorm room. We ended up going out together. We ended up doing our homework together. We ended up going to football games together. And I would say at least half of that group I'm still in touch with today. Really good friends with them. Everyone's getting married, having kids, and we're all keeping in touch, which has been really cool.
It's great. And how about you, Mark? What is the favorite memory?
Well, actually, my favorite memory revolves around sports at Iowa, and I was a big Hawkeye fan, still am. You know, it says University of Iowa Hawkeyes on my license plate, and so I get a lot of comments of that from all the Iowa people that moved to California. But I think it has to be November 14th when we blew Ohio State out, and I was at the game on the 50-yard line. It just doesn't get any better than that.
Lots of great games to look back on. Hopefully a lot more to come here. So, well, thank you all for sharing that. Have everybody mute here if we could, and then we will jump into real estate. So obviously we know COVID-19 has caused lots of shops, offices to close, which has really led to a drop in the demand for traditional brick and mortar retail and office space. So as we think about, and you have thought about in your line of work, what type of effects on real estate, maybe both short and long term, can we expect as a result of COVID-19 in this last year? And as Mark said, is there a bubble? Is this, what are we looking at maybe in the short and long term here? And anyone want to jump in first on that one?
I can, Kate, at least from a retail perspective. I think a lot of the short-term effects that we're seeing are obviously mass closures of stores, right? COVID was a big accelerator for, you know, Macy's and different big box concepts that were, you know, going to close eventually, but COVID seemed to speed up that process. But, you know, short-term effects we're seeing are percentage rent deals, short-term deals, closures, things like that. And capacity caps in stores and restaurants. But the long-term effects, I think we're going to see a lot more delivery and grocery being delivered. I mean, that's something that I didn't know how to do pre-COVID that I do know now. New technology to make sure people feel safe in their stores so that, you know, you can continue to do business. And then I also think there's going to be a slowdown in retail development just across the country so that we can absorb what's been built and move forward. There's going to be less retail, I think, overall, just because there's less of a need for one.
I think we're definitely seeing that, you know, here in this market for sure. Mark?
And to second Sarah's comment on on that. I think we're going to see a lot more omni-channel retail. That's going to be key. There's a lot of groups selling through brick and mortar still, but they're still going through social media, third party, different apps. We've seen here in our market, a lot of groups have built more warehouses than they've seen previously, and they're storing about 30% extra than they thought they would, as they're seeing about a 30 to 35% return rate on those online orders. And a lot of that's being driven through these third-party apps. So I think as big box retail like Amazon grows, I do think we're still going to have smaller retailers that are going to grow in that industrial flex market as well.
Point. Chris and Mark, anything to add on kind of the short and long term?
Yeah. And my perspective's office, right? And the big question is getting back into the office and what the fallout has been or will be going forward. I've been a big proponent of, even last year, I was saying, because as I sat in my house thinking there's no way on earth people want to work like this, missing the social interaction, missing the development, young kids coming out of Iowa, right? You want to go to that office space where you meet all these new people, you exchange all these ideas, you learn from people who are older or have more experience, right? That's how you grow in business. So, and this is like the tech companies came out and said, oh, we're all working from home. Now they're all out reversing what they said last year, right? Because they realized they built a culture off the spaces that they built, and they want to bring people back to that culture, especially as COVID gets over and we get back to working in the office. So I think in the long run, office is going to do just fine. Of course, I kind of have to be a believer in it, but I really think that people need that water cooler discussion. They need that professional interaction, not only for themselves, but to grow. And the efficiency of being in the office together and discussing a problem with your colleague is much faster than trying to text and find out where everyone's at and then get on the phone and do a Zoom. And so I'm a big believer that office is going to come back. People are going to work out of the office. One of the things, we have a building in Atlanta in the downturn, one of our largest tenants, who's Boston Consulting Group, expanded by 40,000 square foot in the middle of this, right? Because their idea behind it was, we're going to have more consultants working from the office as opposed to working remotely, right? To build that culture, keep them in the office space. So, from an office perspective, you're going to have the fallout. There's been a recession, so you're going to lose tenants. But I think in the long run, office is going to come out just fine.
I kind of call it the big shift that's happening right now.
Yeah, you're going to have a flex day in there, right? Or two, and people are going to be flexible about it. But all those people still need to be in the office, and they still need a seat, right? Yeah. So you're still going to need the space for them.
Yeah. Mark, any thoughts on the short and long term?
Well, everybody knows what's happened since the pandemic started. Housing fell by about 2/3 in terms of sales, or demand, as we call it in the business, in March and April. But by May, sales were starting to pick up as people decided they needed to move up or move down or move out of the city or to a more rural area, or get a different living environment to deal with potential long-term effects of the pandemic. And driven by incredibly low interest rates, the market started to move more rapidly throughout the year, until when I think you can safely say there's hardly an area in the country where people don't say to their neighbors, "Guys, the housing market is booming, it's on fire." And I think that's true with very few exceptions. Some areas are much hotter than others. There's a lot of reasons for that. In the old days, we used to say that job growth drives housing sales, but really, and that's maybe true in the micro sense, but in the macro sense is population growth. And every time you add 1 million people to the US population, you need to build a lot of houses to house those people. So that's driving it also. Plus there's a lot of intergenerational movement happening, and people that were living in multiple people in one unit now been able to, with low interest rates, get out on their own. So housing demand has been surging in most parts of the country, and certainly in Southern California. a long-term effect, short-term, and now will probably be long-term, has been costs are skyrocketing. You know, almost all the materials that go into home building and probably other industrial, commercial projects, those materials are all commodities, and commodities are in short supply. You can't get what you need to finish the houses these days. You have to wait months for appliances to show up, and that's driving our costs. I think costs are probably actually increasing just as fast, or if not faster, than housing prices. Fortunately, they only comprise about 50% of the cost of a house, so prices are still keeping us profitable. But I don't see those prices coming down anytime soon, and we're all gonna pay the price for that in everything we do for some time to come.
We're definitely seeing that in this market too, with especially lumber prices, as we are hearing about, but you know, going up in February, but then even in the last few weeks, some reports of that significant increase again. Any other thoughts on, you know, those supply chain issues and building costs going up, and how long that might endure?
Well, I'll let some of the other guys pitch in on this, but I think it's going to endure for some time. But it's anytime that you have this supply demand imbalance, it's just hard to overcome. Everybody's trying to push their price up, and so what is a cost to me is somebody else's price. And when there's more demand for his product than he has product, he can raise the price, and he does, and we pass that on when we can, and in a market like this, we can. That's not going to go away anytime soon. What usually brings costs down is a recession, and I don't think anybody's that I know of that's an economist these days is predicting that to happen in the near term. So I don't think anybody should be trying to predict it longer term, because I don't think we know what the future holds there. But the costs are going to stay high for a long, long time to come.
Chris, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's generally also a function of the amount of money that they've dumped into the system, right? So commodity prices are going up, asset prices, right? We're selling a property in Atlanta right now. We're going to benefit, right? There's so much money in the system, and all these funds, institutional investors were able to raise a lot of money over the last year, so they need to put it to work. So, but I agree with Mark. We're seeing it on the engineering and operations side in terms of getting supplies for the buildings and getting building out space, right? We do a lot of tenant build outs. The costs are going up. I think we have a development arm. So I think the last I heard was, you know, the cost of materials are up 15% and continue to go up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, when you mentioned, I think you mentioned the industrial warehouse market, and I think Chris, maybe you work in this area too, but certainly that's a hot area right now. Lots of deals happening in that area. Is that going to continue? Do you see that as kind of a long-term play for investors when it comes to warehouse?
I do. We've seen here in our Des Moines market, a lot of these buildings that are 135 to about 230,000 square feet. Many of those buildings are getting scooped up by even just single tenant groups. The other thing that I've noticed here in our market that's been huge is a lot of these office users are kind of looking into this flex office market as well. They're starting to realize that they don't need the traditional 3-story building with the amenities for a smaller business. They're going to this hybrid model. It's taller ceilings, more open, pull up right to the door. Everything's right there. And we're seeing a lot more of that here as well. There's a project in particular that just got delivered. That's more in that $7.50 to $8.50 per square foot. Versus your typical Class A office, which is going to be anywhere from your $18 to $22. Again, we're not going to have the amenities, but with the groups having the flexibility to come and go as they please, I think that's going to help reduce that footprint a little bit and allow for that more industrial flex office product.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on kind of the warehouse push?
No, we don't do industrial, but I will echo Aiden's comments on the flex office. We've seen a number of those investment opportunities in Portland and Atlanta. A lot of those are being bought to be turned into creative office plays, right? So it'll be a mix of, there'll be some retail in there, whether it's a restaurant, creative restaurant, or it's creative office play with high ceilings, a unique, neighborhood setting, or they'll use it as the traditional flex office warehouse space.
Sarah, do you see opportunities in the retail space for some of these niche kind of smaller retail opportunities moving forward?
In the retail landscape?
Yeah.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of room to grow for young brands. I think there's some interesting opportunities. Retail streets, like the Mag Mile in Chicago, and that they're experiencing rent decrease. The rent's decreasing just because there isn't enough demand. So I think that there's a big opportunity for younger, smaller brands. A lot of these click to brick brands that need a physical presence. I think there's definitely an opportunity now with the effects of COVID for them to come in and really create a strong strategy for themselves and expand into, this market or any other market in the country.
So we got some questions prior to today about just what do you recommend to someone who's looking, maybe they don't have a lot of background or knowledge in the industry. How do people get started in real estate? What do you recommend as professionals in this field for, if you have an interest, kind of that 101, how would you get started?
Well, since I'm the most recent graduate, I guess I'm pretty qualified to answer this question because I did this pretty recently. I would do a lot of research. Obviously, the first one, pretty straightforward, is to get your real estate license. If brokerage is something you're interested in, you may not necessarily need it, but it's definitely gives you the fundamentals, and then you're licensed. I would research the companies that are doing what you would want to be doing, and I would reach out to people that are in the company. Look on LinkedIn and just really network, grow your network. And then, as a young broker, at least, I would say, be prepared to make a lot of phone calls, a lot of cold calls. That's the name of the game, especially early on. You got to build your book of business and continue to network with your peers and with prospective customers, clients. I mean, Chris and I met, I guess you were already an existing client at that time, but we met in a meeting, and that's how this whole thing started. So just be open, always be on the phone, always be talking to people, and that's how I've gotten this far. So
Chris, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say, as Sarah said, research the companies, but reach out to alumni at those companies. Reach out to alumni in the markets you want to be in, because even those that are in and not in real estate, right? Lawyers are always good to reach out to, right? Because they have law practices and they may not be in real estate, but they can pass you on to companies or contacts. Alumni, I'm always willing to talk to. Students, don't everyone email me at once, but always happy to pass along advice. But the biggest thing is, just be willing to pick up the phone. The biggest thing I tell young people is call first. I want to know that you're able to pick up the phone and, have a conversation. Don't just send an email, because I do miss a lot of emails, but if you follow up with an email, then I connect the two, right? And a lot of alumni are busy, so, be willing to just give them a call. And most will be willing to talk with you and give you advice or pass you on to somebody they know that's looking or has an entry-level position available. But definitely you got to reach out to the network. Obviously, one of the biggest things at Iowa, which Sarah and I have been pushing and hopefully happens, is a stronger real estate curriculum at Iowa with, certain software training like Argus. So the students become more competitive in this market, and it's easier to bring them in as interns and hire them full time.
Yeah.
And just to echo Chris, if you pick up the phone, I think anyone would be impressed. Actually, a Wisconsin student was doing a research project and picked up the phone and called me on one of my listings. And I was blown away because I don't think I could have done that being 19 years old at the time. So pick up the phone and ask if you can get them, for that amount of time, ask them how they got where they are, and then ask them for 3 people that you should reach out to, and just build your network that way. It's a pretty easy way to do it.
That's great advice. I can say in the economic development world too, it is really all about relationships and people. And so the sooner you can build that network and have that circle of people that you can reach out to, the further you'll go. So Aiden, I want to ask you, as when you look back, maybe any unanticipated challenges you had during maybe your first year in real estate, and what people could expect and how you might have prepared had you known those things. Any challenges when you first started?
Yeah, one of the largest things when I started that was tough is how do I convince a owner who's worked with a group or a team within the market that they should list a property with a University of Iowa grad that's never taken a real estate class before, who's now a broker in the metro. And what I've noticed is a lot of groups still don't do the fundamentals. A lot just put a sign in the ground and hope the phone rings. Most owners are starting to realize who will and won't do that work. And I think that helped me grow early on in my career. Marketing reports are very important to this day. It's not a wait for the owner to call you and hope that you've got an answer for them. It's be proactive with reaching out to those owners, show them that you're working on their behalf, because that's really what separates you from most of the competition. Here in the Des Moines market, there's not a lot of young brokers. So outside of the picking up the phone, it's going to the marketing events, it's meeting the people in the market who are currently active. As they phase out and groups don't want to do the work, they're going to look to the younger guys to pick up some of that and hopefully hire some more groups to be in the business, just because it is a little bit of a challenging start. For me, it was picking up the phone, smiling and dialing and going to events. And then that was the biggest way to overcome the owners looking past, you're young, you don't have the experience. It was just showing them, yeah, I'll do the work. I will proactively reach out to you versus you calling me for an update.
That's great advice. Mark, what advice would you give someone that's maybe a student looking to get into real estate or start a career in this space? What do you think are the most valuable skills and assets for someone to have?
Well, I lucked into getting into it. I certainly didn't know anything about it growing up in a small town in Southern Iowa. I never really understood how real estate worked, but I was a numbers guy. Though I didn't have an accounting degree, I took enough marketing courses to understand a lot about that side of the business. But I think it's important to figure out what you're good at. And if you've taken a finance class or a couple of finance classes at Iowa, you might be good at finance, or maybe you took a lot of accounting, or you majored in marketing. But every real estate company needs people from each one of those disciplines. Even construction companies need somebody that has not a clue about how to build a building or a house or an industrial center, but they need accountants, they need marketing people, they need finance people. And there's lots of positions besides starting, high up in the chain, running a company. You basically got to get your foot in the door. And the way you get your foot in your door is you have a skill that somebody needs. And so you look at the companies that are that are looking for something that you're good at, that you have an education in, that you're maybe experienced. And I mean, I started out in the accounting side, finance side of the business, and eventually ended up learning how to build houses and how to market houses, how to sell and close houses. And I got my real estate license, I got my broker's license, I got my contractor's license, and I did everything I could to be as knowledgeable as there was out there looking for a job. And I haven't had to do that because I really only had one real estate job, and then I went out on my own. But you've got to contact those companies that are looking for people that you think you're going to be a fit for, and that takes a lot. It's a full-time job. Finding a job is a full-time job, and that's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you might have to start a little lower than you want it. You might not make as much money, but you got to get your foot in the door someplace to get started. So go get started someplace.
Yeah, great advice. Well, obviously we have some people that really work in, large urban areas here, and maybe some of you that have some experience in rural. Do you see real estate looking different, kind of the trends and things that are happening in the urban rural, I don't want to say divide, but the difference in those two markets that maybe are similar, or are we seeing some differences? We talk a lot, I know in our office, about kind of this migration of people, and are people really moving around? And so from both the residential and commercial side, do you see kind of trends in rural Iowa and or other spaces in the states you're in that where there is some of that migration happening that is impacting real estate?
I mean, I can go. I think the one thing you've seen is, the last 10 years, we'll call it pre-COVID, you saw this migration downtown, right? That was the big sales pitch. The companies moving downtown, you had the residential development in almost every major market in the country. And although that's reversed a little bit, I think some of the suburbs have really caught on, and they're creating those live, work, play urban nodes around, whether it's train transportation downtown, so you can get that reverse commute, or reverse commuter who lives in the city, young worker, goes to an suburban urban node, if you want to call it, where they've created a little downtown niche out in the suburbs around a train station. And that entices businesses to come out and workers to come out. So I think some of these suburbs have done a good job of that. How big of a reverse migration that will be, who knows? But even some of the millennials who now have families, right, who are moving back out to the suburbs, they want to be in a small city or a suburb that has that feel. So I think that some of those suburbs have caught on to that and have done a good job of creating that urban node out in the suburbs. And I think that'll continue.
Yeah, those bedroom communities have really transformed in a way that where you can do a lot of your living right there. Very
right
point. Any other thoughts on that and kind of how that landscape is changing? It was probably in the works prior to COVID, but there's certainly opportunities now, I think, for communities to make those investments, certainly. I'm going to ask one more kind of to the group, and then we'll move into some Q&A here that we're getting. What about investing in real estate? Is this the time? And if so, where do you see the best investments happening, the smartest investments? Chris, you're unmuted, so I'm going to call you first.
From an individual perspective, sure. I think if you can find value, whether it's a bubble or not, and you can finance it right, there's always an opportunity to invest in real estate. I think that's a good thing about real estate. So, broadly speaking, is it a bubble? Yeah, I think absolutely there's a bubble. I think we're going to get top pricing for an office asset that we're selling in Atlanta that far exceeds what we underwrote even pre-COVID, right? Because there's so much money in the system. That money's got to go somewhere, and we're one of the few on the market with the profile that we have. So but it's all about what you're looking for and financing it correctly, so you don't get it over your ski tips if something does happen. But I think there's always value, whether it's an up market or a down market. You got to be willing to look for it and do the work with it.
Sarah, what are your thoughts?
I gotta be honest, I'm a leasing broker. We got a team that does investment sales. We got multiple teams. We got a retail team that sits behind us and an office team. That's I think more Mark and Aiden and Chris's vein.
Yeah.
I defer to them.
I know what you think.
Yep, I'm gonna, second Chris there as well and say, I always like the idea of investing in real estate. For me personally, it's something I know, it's something I understand. And at the end of the day, you're always gonna have an asset that's worth something. If you can take advantage of the depreciation and understand how that could work, it could be greatly beneficial for anybody who's looking for any tax savings. Secondly, it's something that you control outside of the stock market. You have a lease tied to it. You have business assets that are tied to it. You usually have a company that you can underwrite ahead of time or during a due diligence period that you can't necessarily do as much with a stock as it's so volatile and can go up and down so quickly. We see a little less of that in real estate. So I think even if the price is a little high right now, it's still a good time, in my opinion, to buy if the financing's right, as Chris said.
Yeah. Mark, I'll give you the last word on this one, and then we'll kick it over to Ashley for some Q&A here.
Well, investing in real estate should primarily be thought as long-term. Not to say that you can't make some money short-term. Most of us have, but you need to be in it for the long run. You're not really looking to get in and out of a deal in a year, though it's been possible to do that now. But it's a longer term investment. It's not like the stock market, in my view. Your best gains are made over a period of time, and you might have to ride out some low spots, but the market always comes back. And when it does come back, it gets better than it was before. I've said that I wish that I had learned the multifamily side of the business sooner than I did, because I spent the first 30 years of my 40 years in real estate in new home building, new home sales. And yet most of the wealthiest guys I know in Southern California are apartment guys. Not to say there aren't a lot of wealthy home builders, there are, but there's a lot of less well-known people that have made their fortune in multifamily, which is primarily apartments, but also single family. The easiest way for anybody to get into real estate is to buy a house and rent it, buy a townhouse, buy a small block of apartments. And value is the key. Not to say, you can overpay, and over the long run, you'll still make money, but you make a lot more money when, as Chris says, you find the value in the marketplace. And with financing today, it's easier than ever to make the numbers work. That's probably not going to last forever. If rates go up, it'll get harder and harder to make the numbers work. But right now, it's a good time to be looking at that value opportunity and find the financing to make it work. And it's just like finding a job. You got to get started. And I don't think there's any better time than, probably the best time was yesterday. The next best time is today.
The one thing I would absolutely echo that Mark mentioned is, don't assume you're going to flip out. Just understand and invest with the understanding you're going to invest for a period of time. Like, you're going to hold it longer than you anticipate. If you get lucky or you get fortunate and you can flip out and make good money, so be it. But I would never go into an investment thinking that's it and then buy it with that in mind, because the markets change so fast, opportunities change so fast. Usually you're doing some kind of value add to it. So capital changes and shifts quickly. So just invest with the idea that you're going to have to keep it longer than you anticipate.
Thanks, Chris. Ashley, do we have a couple good questions here? Looks like they're coming in.
We do. And I have to say, I've learned some really fancy vernacular like smile and dial. and click to brick. I'm like really into this. I'm gonna use smile and dial though a lot more in my line of work than anything else. So I appreciate that. Yeah, we have a lot of good questions coming in. One of the ones that just caught my eye is, what do you see as a new up and coming property type investment? Not traditional retail, multifamily, some of the things you all were just talking about, but what else are you thinking? Student housing, data centers, senior housing, ... So I'll let you take it from there, experts.
I will say life sciences, and while it's not up and coming, it is up and coming from an institutional investor standpoint. Everyone I've called recently, Oak Tree and Apollo and all these guys, these big investment groups who are raising money, they're all allocating a large piece of their funds to life sciences. So actually in Fulton Market, we have a huge life science lab building that's going up right now. So I think that's the new hot investment type.
So a quick follow-up to that just came in. What are your thoughts on data center investments? There's a lot of tenants out there looking for data centers.
Not my game. I have no idea.
I don't know too much
Sounds
about
like
that.
a great idea.
I mean, I don't know too much about that. I do know that one of the top producing brokers in our office year over year is a data center broker. It's all he does. So, I mean, I think as everything moves online, I mean, we think online is just a cloud. It's just like, it's fairy dust. Like, where is it? What is it? It's in a data center. So, I mean, the internet's just getting bigger. It needs to go somewhere. So why not make it a data center? And so I think that makes sense.
Another question that I think is interesting is, what has been the impact, if any, on some of the civil unrest we've seen in some of the communities? Is that having an impact on the real estate market, both residential and commercial?
Well, I mean, Michigan Avenue is one of the streets I know better than I probably should. I know too much, I think. So seeing that was where a lot of the civil unrest was happening in downtown Chicago, and it was tough to see the backlash and all of that. But there were rumors that certain tenants were going to leave the market. Those were rumors. I think at the end of the day, all those people are tenants. They don't own those buildings, and all those buildings are insured. I don't know, Chris, you might have a different opinion being a landlord. But I think it's tenants are taking different precautions to make sure their storefronts are safe and protected. There's some new technology coming out that's really impressive. Glass that you can take a jackhammer to or a sledgehammer to and 40 times and it won't break. So I think there's new technology that will hopefully deflect that kind of reaction again. So, but yeah, I think for the most part, most tenants are staying in the market. That wasn't a reason enough for them to be deterred from that market. But Chris, I don't know.
So all of our urban assets we had to board up. So Minneapolis, Atlanta, Chicago, we did have some damage, but I don't know if we'll truly know how last year's civil unrest will impact tenants, because a lot of people weren't downtown. COVID had already locked down. So most people weren't even in the office. So you didn't have large populations downtown when all that happened. So now we're a year removed, maybe 8 months removed from the worst of it. And people are coming back to the office, right? CDC's lifting the mask mandates. And so I think people are more focused getting back into the office now. So I don't know if we'll ever know how impactful it would have been had everybody been in their office and doing what they typically do during a workday when all of that happened. But so I'm not hearing it from any tenants that it's causing them any issue getting back to the office, even in Minneapolis.
This one is kind of on the heels of what you guys were just talking about. So sorry, Sarah and Chris, to keep picking on you, but the question is, how have you seen retail tenants perform during the pandemic, and what have property managers done to retain tenants to keep them from moving out? Deferred rent, rent abatement?
They've been structured differently. I think everyone's taking a different approach. There doesn't seem to be like an industry standard of how people approached COVID. I think every lease is different. So every landlord and tenant are different. And, a restaurant versus a traditional retail store versus, a bank, they're all a little different, but I've mostly rent abatement, rent deferment. There's been some kinds of percentage rent in lieu of regular rent, the agreed upon rent. So it's all been different. I think at the end of the day, what we said as tenant rep brokers is it's either we figure this out or you're going to have a vacant space, and we may not know how long you'll have this vacant space for. Maybe COVID come, this is all over tomorrow, or here we are over a year later, still talking about it. So I think it's every situation is different, but deferred rent abatement, extending term, based on the rent abatement or deferral period. So they're all a little different. Chris, I don't know if you feel different.
Yeah, retail's for the most part, it's ancillary to our office assets, so it doesn't drive the boat in terms of revenue. But we've basically gone through, what you don't want is people to come back to an empty building and nowhere to eat lunch, nowhere to have a drink, nowhere to buy your sundries or whatever it is. So we've worked out with every one of our retail tenants, all different, right? So some we would extend 3 years, and then whatever rent you didn't pay over 2020 and the first part of 2021, we would spread it out over the remaining term. Some retail tenants paid OPEX and taxes while we deferred their base rent. So it was all different, but it was a matter of working with them to keep them in the space, as Sarah said, because you don't want dark spaces when your tenants come back. You want them to have a place to grab a drink, have a place to eat lunch. So
just kind of echoing what you said, I'm back in the office. I've been back for a few months, and I'm getting really sick of Chipotle because it's the only thing open. Never thought I'd say it, but I'm starting to get sick of it.
Another question that I think is interesting is, how has COVID affected the design and permitting process for new developments? And what do you expect will stick moving forward?
This is Mark. Well, most of the cities and counties shut down in-office visits. So one of the reasons that I decided to retire last year was because doing it by Zoom and doing it on the phone is you can get it done, but it takes longer. It's less effective. It's less personal. But it's been difficult to move projects forward as fast with the pandemic restrictions that were in place at cities and counties than before. And I don't know how long that's going to go on, probably for some time. But I think the cities and counties have figured out they don't need, just like a lot of industries, they don't always need to have their people in the office every day. So they don't need to be in the city hall or in the county buildings. They can do some of the work from home. And I think it's going to be around for a while. I don't know how long, maybe forever, but certainly for a while longer. It's slowed permitting down, the processing down, but it's taken out that element where you're sitting across the table from the county planner or the city engineer, where you're able to, mark up the plans or mark up the schematics. It's just harder to do some of that stuff. As high tech as we've become, it's just not the same as rolling the plans out on the table, where everybody's got a red pen or a blue pen or a black pen marking them up. So we'll see how it goes, but I certainly didn't enjoy doing it like we're doing it now. It's just not the same, but we'll see how it goes.
Ashley, I saw the question about technology. Everything's been disrupted this year, obviously, education, healthcare, everything. So for your industry, what technology do you think is most likely to disrupt real estate? what has, or what do you think might in the future? I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
I think from a not really a disruption, but just from a technology standpoint, these CRMs are getting a lot more popular within our business, especially in an environment like we have here in Des Moines, where we have a team. We have 4 brokers who are interacting, working with some of the same clients, looking at some of the same deals, potentially chasing some of the same deals. We're able to use CRM systems to know where everyone is in the process, to understand who's emailed who, where we're at, what's the last step. Pre-COVID, we didn't really need that as much. Everyone was here. It was very easy to peek in, talk to somebody about something. With this work from home and setting up meetings, limited amount of attendees in a meeting, it's easy to pick up where somebody else left off if we weren't actually present. So I think that's one thing, at least our team here in Des Moines has seen a big increase in. Technology like Apto, where you can track emails, you can track who you've reached out to, you can track where you're at in the process. That's something we've always done, but not to the level that we're doing it today, just because we're forced to now, given the restrictions that have been in place the last year and a half.
Thank you.
I think some technology that, at least from an office standpoint, is a lot of sanitary technology to make people feel comfortable to get back into the office. There's certain things like light bulbs that have UV or like blue light that kills bacteria. So at night they'll turn these the bulbs blue, and it'll clean your desk and your area. Certain things like that. I don't know too much about it, but I think there's going to be a big push for sanitation just moving forward for forever. I think to make people feel comfortable to get back in the office, to get back into grocery stores and back in hotels and everything. I think there's going to be a lot of technology. It's not brokerage or day-to-day related, but just in terms of asset management stuff. I could see a big push for that.
Absolutely.
So prop tech in the office side has been huge in helping the efficiency of how buildings run, right? There's energy efficiency prop tech to monitor your energy usage throughout the building. There's tenant engagement apps like HQO and Rise, who everything's on an app, right? I can order lunch, I can book a time in the gym, I can turn off my lights, I can turn on my lights, I can change the temperature in my office. So it's very interactive. There's also the aggregation of data, right? I think your real estate may have been one of the last ones to go away from Excel spreadsheets with everything, right? Where it's all over the place and in 10 different files and you can't ever aggregate it. Now, a lot of these technology platforms like VTS on the leasing front, like it tracks all the leasing data and then it takes all their aggregate data so you can see what's going on in the market and make better real-time decisions. But, as Sarah was saying, with the whole cleaning the office, one of the big things is touchless entry, right? So can I walk into my office building and will the turnstile open, right? As I walk up to it, it's all through my cell phone. Elevator picks the floor that I go to. I walk in the elevator, I don't touch any buttons, it goes right to my floor, I walk off. So those are big things that are actually getting implemented in some of the largest portfolios in the country right now.
Lots of innovation will come out of this time in so many industries.
Absolutely.
I know we're tight on time. We have about 1 minute left, but Chris, I did put your LinkedIn group in the chat, and I thought I'd give you or Sarah 30 seconds to tell us about that and encourage people to join.
Go ahead, Chris. You can do it.
Okay. About 4 years ago, Sarah and I met. She was a broker for us, and we decided to form a University of Real Estate alumni group. It's the University of Real Estate Alumni Network. We've had events here in Chicago. We've expanded it. There's members from Minneapolis, Des Moines, Atlanta, but the idea was to connect alumni to each other in the industry, because we don't have a pipeline from the university to our companies, and then connect with the students who are trying to get internships and jobs in real estate. So feel free to check out our LinkedIn group, connect either of us through LinkedIn, and we can connect you to the group. But we're looking to just expand and connect more people from the University of Iowa who are professionals in real estate.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our panelists and to everyone who attended today's alumni panel event, The Business of Real Estate. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact our panelists at the information shown on your screen. When the event ends in just a moment, you'll see a quick survey. We'd be grateful if you could share your thoughts and help make future events even better. On behalf of the Tippie College of Business, thank you for joining us and have a great evening.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks.